can we shift to Nigel in America? It sounds like the title of a bad novel, doesn't it? Nigel in America. And to an extent, I think his experience before the committee of the House of Representatives, the Justice Committee, was rather less happy than he'd hoped, wasn't it? I mean, he he put up a reasonably good account of himself, but he was also thoroughly roasted very effectively, I think, by two Democrat representatives. How well prepared do you think he was? I mean, he moves in the America that's familiar to him, doesn't he? He moves in the America of Mar-a-Lago. He moves in the America of Palm Beach, of MAGA, of that section of the Republican Party. But of course, Congress is bitterly divided in the same way our House of Commons is. And there he was exposed to the full red in tooth and claw Democrat, wasn't he? And I thought they took quite large chunks of flesh out of him.
Well, I think, and they were mostly focusing on supposed Russia links and his so-called support for Putin, which he doesn't. Whilst it may have played to the Carol Cadwalader Byline Times crowd, I don't think it would have much cut through beyond that, because again, these things have been said here before, they've been done before, and it hasn't actually had any serious impact upon him, because at base, it's just not true. And the fact that he's able to sort of deal with these attacks, I think, reasonably well, is that
there's nothing to them. There's no evidence.
But in the theatre that is the congressional hearing, yes, I suspect it wasn't ideal.
As you know, although I remain old fool that I am, a member of the Conservative Party, I am very reform friendly, as you well know. So everything that I'm saying is done out of friendly criticism rather than unfriendly criticism. The other thing that did strike me was, of course, that Nigel wasn't actually very well prepared. In other words, his speech was characteristic of the kind of slightly stumpy speech that he is good at. But in a formal committee, it doesn't actually work very well, as you saw with the kind of speeches, very detailed, the product of lots and lots of researchers working on them. You don't think those senators know the detail of Nigel's politics or British life themselves. They have huge teams of researchers doing the work for them. So this was carefully rehearsed, but carefully researched political theatre. Now, Nigel, it struck me just listening late last night to the links to America. Nigel actually had a means by which he could and should have responded. In other words, what he should have said to those Democrats was, you wanted to do in America exactly what Starmer is doing here. If you remember, Kamala Harris's running mate actually said in one of the vice presidential debates, the protections of the First Amendment don't extend to hate speech. In other words, the Democrats have been trying to bring in America, as this is exactly whatever he was called, I forget his name, but the white chap rather than the black who was interrogating Farage, that when he was talking about the limitations on the First Amendment, what the Democrats were trying to do was to replicate exactly the kind of limitations on freedom of speech that we have here. Because remember, all of these pernicious movements in Britain, Black Lives Matter, transgenderism, the whole business of critical race theory, they all begin in France, then they're amplified in America through American academic and political life, and then they're reflected back here. Now, if Nigel had been master of that brief, he could have taken control of that committee. And the big point that I want to put to you, Gawain, and I'm delighted to hear about your being on the board, Nigel is going to have to grasp policy, the actual detail of policy. And this is something he has never fully done before. He's a brilliant, reflexive politician. He's an extraordinary reader of the public mood. I know I've worked with him in the days when I was, before I was decided to be too dangerous for talk radio, for GB News and whatever. I've worked with him. He's a brilliant interviewer, broadcaster, a natural sympathy and all the rest of it. But policy, the detail of policy, has never been his strong point.
In response to that, David, I think the change in Farage between last year, about this time, and now is very significant. A year ago, he was the past master disruptor in chief. It's what he's brilliant at. It's what he's done for years. But if you look at him now, with these major set piece press conferences he's had over the last few weeks, on the crime and immigration and stuff of that sort, from what I understand, he's spending a day to 2 days preparing for each one of those events with the facts, with the figures, with the solidity. And unlike any other politician in Britain, after the end of his speech, questions. He answers every single question that's thrown at him. He gets a list of every journalist that wants to ask the question, and he answers every single one. And it doesn't have to be about the subject matter in the room, though most of them are, of course, but he will answer things across the board.
But some of the answers have to be corrected quite quickly afterwards, don't they?
Very, very rarely. And yes, but
no, well, actually, on big issues rather frequently.
On the subject of the press conference, the du jour, he has a mastery of the figures and all the rest of it. But you're right. I mean, a congressional office is, there are more staffers working on policy and prep for a single American senator than there are for the entirety of reform. And that is a problem of growth, a speed of growth, and frankly, a problem of money. But if you look at right now, if you would go on the Reform website and look at the jobs available page, we are employing policy analysts. It's not there yet, but it's certainly in hand. So whilst you are right that historically Nigel's strongest suit has not been policy detail, I think he is becoming, or has become, acutely aware that he's likely to be the next prime minister, and as such he has to, if not grow up, but take that responsibility with the absolute seriousness that it deserves and needs. And I think it's clear from his demeanour. This is something he's worked out for himself. He doesn't need to be advised that this is the case. He knows, and he knows deep in his heart, and the depth of his soul, that he has to master those briefs and get the policy work done and get the comprehension of it so he can answer with his quippery something very serious.